I found my dad's old journal hidden in the attic filled with secrets about my family's past. What I read made me question everything about my childhood. And as I unraveled the hidden stories, I realized there was so much more to my family than I could have ever imagined. But the biggest revelation came when I discovered I'm a 32-year-old woman. And if you had asked me a month ago, I would have told you I had a pretty normal upbringing. Nothing perfect, of course, no. Family is, but I never thought there was anything unusual about my parents. My mom, Susan, has always been the talkative, opinionated one. The kind of woman who likes to be in control of everything around her. My dad, Robert, was the opposite, quiet, reserved, never the kind of man to raise his voice or make a scene growing up. I was always closer to my dad. He was the one who helped me with my school projects, who showed up to every recital and every game. Even if he stood in the back while my mom chatted. With the other parents, I never questioned our family dynamic much. Mom was demanding, dad was patient, and that's just how things were. But everything changed when I found his old journal. It happened by accident. My husband and I had just moved into my childhood home. After my parents downsized to a smaller place, it wasn't something I had planned. I wasn't particularly sentimental about the house, but the price was good. And it saved us the trouble of finding a new place. One weekend, we were cleaning out the attic, sorting through decades worth of boxes my parents had left. Behind most of it was junk old Christmas, decorations, outdated clothes, piles of paperwork that should have been thrown out years ago, but in the corner tucked inside a dusty cardboard box labeled books, I found something that made me pause. It was an old leather-bound journal, worn at the edges like it had been handled 1,000 times. The pages were yellowed, and when I opened it, I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my dad's. I don't know why. I hesitated. Maybe it was because my dad never struck me as the type to keep a journal. Or maybe it was the fact that something about it, about finding it, hidden away in a forgotten box, felt off. But curiosity won. I flipped to the first page. At first, the entries were exactly what you'd expect from a personal journal: notes about work, daily life, reflections on small moments he wrote, about my mom, how they met their early years together, how much he loved her. But as I kept reading, something changed. The entries became shorter, more frustrated. Started seeing things like Susan doesn't listen to me anymore. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending things are fine. Everything is about what she wants. I don't even recognize myself anymore. It was subtle at first, but as I read on, I realized my dad wasn't just venting about a bad day or two. He was miserable. He wrote about feeling trapped, how he'd wake up in the mornings and already feel exhausted, how every conversation with my mom turned into a battle. She dismisses everything I say. I feel like a ghost in my own home. Had never seen my dad as an unhappy man. He wasn't particularly expressive, but he never seemed broken the way his words made him sound. Then an entry from years later made my stomach drop. I can't believe she did it again. Every time I think things will get better, she finds a new way to humiliate me. I wish I had left when I had the chance. I read that sentence over and over. Left. My dad had thought about leaving my mom. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My parents had been together for decades. No one ever mentioned anything about them nearly splitting up. My mom had always acted like their marriage was solid, unshakable. But here was my dad's own handwriting, saying otherwise. The next few pages were filled with more of the same entries that described fights unspoken, resentment moments where he felt like he was being pushed out of his own life, and then an entry from right before I was born. She's pregnant again. I should be happy, but all I feel is dread. Maybe this will fix things. Maybe this will just make it worse. Either way, I don't have a choice. I stared at that page for a long time. I knew my parents had issues, but this I had never, not once, thought my dad had ever felt trapped in his marriage, that he had felt like he had no choice. But to stay, I kept reading, and then I found something even worse. An entry, dated years later. I tried to talk to her about the money today. She laughed in my face, said I was overreacting. It's all gone, every last cent. I don't know how we're going to recover from this money. What money? My parents had never been rich, but they were comfortable. At least, that's what I had always believed. But as I kept reading, I realized my dad had been writing about something, some financial decision my mom had made, one that had ruined them, and yet I had never heard a word about it. The journal ended abruptly after that. No resolution, no final thoughts, just pages and pages of a man who felt unheard, unseen, and at some point hopeless. I sat there for a long time, the journal resting on my lap, and that's when I realized I didn't know my dad at all. I thought I did. I thought we were close, but the man who wrote these words, he was nothing like the version of him I had built in my mind, and worse. There were too many unanswered questions. The money, the fights, the near separation. I had to know more. So I decided to ask my brother Max if anyone else would have picked up on this. it would be him. He had always been closer to my mom, but maybe that meant he had seen a side of things I hadn't. But when I brought it up, he shut down immediately. He wouldn't even look at me. "Let it go," he said, his voice tight. "What do you mean, let it go?" I pushed Max. "Did you know about this?" He hesitated. Then, after a long pause, he said something that sent a chill down my spine. "You're not going to like what you find." That's when I knew this wasn't just about my dad's feelings. Something happened in my family, and I wasn't stopping until I found out what I didn't know what to say to Max. His reaction was so strange, like he wasn't just brushing me off, but warning me. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice careful. He sighed, rubbing his face like he was already regretting saying anything. "Just don't go digging where you don't need to." "It's in the past, I repeated, feeling a flicker of frustration. "Max, this isn't just some old argument Dad wrote about leaving Mom, about money problems. That's not nothing." He exhaled sharply, looking away. "Yeah, well, people don't always say what they mean." That sentence stuck with me because the way he said it, it didn't sound like he was defending Dad. If anything, it sounded like he was annoyed with him. I didn't press any further. It was clear Max wasn't going to tell me anything, but the way he shut down made me more suspicious than ever. If he knew something, then there had to be more to this. So I decided to go straight to the source. That evening, I sat in my childhood home, the journal hidden in my lab. My parents had downsized to a small condo across town, but we still saw them. Often enough, I had invited Dad over, under the excuse of wanting to catch up. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to make small talk. He showed up right on time like he always did. He was still the same old dad, soft-spoken, polite always. Looking a little tired, but never complaining. We made coffee, sat at the cup-style table, and after a few minutes of meaningless chatter, I finally worked up the courage. "Dad," I said carefully, "I found something in the attic." Glanced up from his cup, eyebrows raising slightly. "Oh, I swallowed your old journal." For a moment, his face didn't change. Then slowly, he set his coffee down. His hands rested on the table, fingers curled slightly against the wood. "I see," he said after a long pause. Hesitated, watching him. I read some of it. His expression didn't shift, but I could tell he was processing, thinking, weighing. His words, I kept going. "You wrote about wanting to leave Mom, about something happening with money. I don't understand, Dad. None of us ever knew anything about this. What happened?" Silence stretched between us. Then he let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "That was a long time ago, I know, but it doesn't matter anymore." His voice wasn't sharp, but it was firm, final, like he had no interest in reopening old wounds. "Felt frustration bubbling up, Dad. You were miserable. You hated being stuck in that marriage. How can you say it doesn't matter?" He looked at me, then his eyes, tired, but there was something else there, too, something I couldn't quite place. "I stayed," he said simply. "That doesn't mean everything was fine." I shot back for the first time. Something flickered in his expression, something almost like regret. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." I pressed. "Max knows something. He told me to leave it alone." "Why, what is everyone hiding?" I sat there staring at my dad. He was trying to act like it didn't matter anymore, like he had made peace with it. But I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers twitched against the table. It wasn't in the past. He had just learned to live with it. Wanted to ask more, but I knew if I pushed too hard, he'd shut down, so I let it go for the moment. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. My mom had drained his savings, laughed in his face, and somehow convinced him that it was normal. And for years, he had just accepted it. I didn't know how much she had taken or what she had used it for. But I had a bad feeling that this wasn't just some one-time thing my mom was controlling. She had always been the one who handled the finances. If she had done it once, what were the chances that she hadn't done it again? I needed to find out. The next morning, I called Max. He didn't pick up. I texted him, "I know about the money." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. "Then don't get involved." That was enough confirmation for me. He knew, and he didn't want me digging any deeper. I wasn't listening. I went through old documents my parents had left behind in the attic: tax returns, mortgage statements, bank records. A lot of it was outdated, but I started noticing patterns. My dad's name was on almost everything, but my mom was the one signing off on big financial decisions. Refinancing the house, cashing out investments. I found a record of a joint savings account. My dad's name was on it, but there was a withdrawal, one massive transaction. Almost everything gone signed off by my mom. The date matched the journal entry. She hadn't just taken his money, she had wiped him out. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. I needed more. The next time I went to my parents' house, I went straight for the filing cabinet in their office. My mom had always been meticulous with paperwork. If she had been up to something, there was a chance she had left a trail. I started flipping through files, credit card statements, loan documents, investment accounts. Then I found something that made my stomach drop. A contract. A business loan, one that my dad had co-signed, but it wasn't his business. It wasn't even in his name. It was hers. I stared at the numbers. She had taken out a massive loan in both their names using my dad's credit, and from the looks of it, she hadn't paid back a single dime. It had gone into default years ago, and my dad had been stuck with the consequences. I clenched the paper in my hands. Max's words echoed in my head, "Don't get involved." But it was too late. Took the loan contract home with me. Numbers didn't lie. My dad had been financially wrecked, and my mom had left him to deal with it. But what really got to me was the way he had just let it happen. I needed to know why. The next time I saw my dad, I brought it up. Carefully, I didn't wave the contract in his face or demand answers. I just sat next to him on the porch and asked, "Did Mom ever tell you about a business loan?" His whole body tensed. He didn't look at me. Just exhaled slowly, like he had been waiting for this conversation. She told me it was an investment. Finally said that it would pay off in the long run. I stared at him, and when it didn't, he smiled, but there was no humor in it. She said not to worry. I waited for him to say more, to get angry, to tell me how much this had hurt him, but he didn't. He just sat there looking out at the yard, like we were talking about the weather. I felt something simmering in my chest. "She ruined you financially," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He shook his head. "She's my wife." Clenched my jaw. "That doesn't mean she's my wife," he repeated, firmer. This time, what was I supposed to do? Leave, start over at my age? He let out a dry chuckle. It wasn't that simple. Didn't know what to say. I had expected anger, frustration, something, but instead, he had just accepted it. Maybe he had convinced himself that fighting back wasn't worth it. Or maybe after years of my mom's control, he had just stopped believing he could fight back. I spent the next few days digging deeper into everything. There was no turning back now. I had the loan contract, I had the bank statements, I had everything I needed to prove that my mom had manipulated and controlled my dad financially for years. But that wasn't enough. I wanted something more. I wanted her to face the consequences. I knew I couldn't go to my dad about it. He wouldn't care. He'd tell me to let it go. But Max, he'd know what to do. I approached him again. Max, I found everything I said one evening sitting across from him in the kitchen. The loan, the money Mom's been draining Dad dry. He didn't respond right away, just stared at the counter. "I don't know what you think you're going to do with this," he said. Finally, his voice quiet. "Mom will just lie her way out of it." I shook my head. "It's not about what she says. It's about what's already on paper." She took from him, and he didn't even know it was happening until it was too late. Max shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to be involved in any of this," he said. I knew what he was really saying. He was scared. Scared of what would happen if we confronted her, scared of the fallout, but I wasn't scared anymore. "I'm not asking for you to take sides." I said, "I just need you to back me up because this is about Dad, not about her." There was a long silence before he spoke again, barely above a whisper. "Do what you have to do." That was all I needed. I spent the next few weeks preparing everything. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud. I knew this wasn't something that would be easy to prove, but with all the evidence I had, bank statements, loan records, even some text messages I had found in old files about questionable transactions, I knew I could build a case. The hardest part was figuring out how to confront my mom. Couldn't just come at her with everything all at once. She would deny it, spin some story, and try to manipulate the situation to make me feel like the bad guy. I had to be smart. One afternoon, when she came over to visit, I invited her to sit down in the living room. I didn't tell her anything about what I had been working on, just that I wanted to talk. I could see her already on edge. She had a way of sensing when something was wrong, and today she was practically waiting for me to bring it up. "So, what's this about?" she asked, her voice cool. Sat across from her, taking a deep breath. "I've been going through Dad's old papers." She froze for a second, her eyes narrowing. "Why?" "I found something I think you should explain," I said, pulling the loan contract from the folder and setting it down in front of her. She didn't touch it, just stared at it like it might bite. "What's this?" she asked, voice tight. "A business loan, signed by both you and Dad." She scoffed, trying to play it off. "That's old news." "Already paid that off years ago," I leaned. In keeping my voice steady, "It's not just any loan. You took out a massive amount in Dad's name and it went into default. That's why he's been struggling for years." Her face went pale for a split second, but she recovered quickly, her eyes flashing with annoyance. You don't know what you're talking about, she snapped, but her voice wasn't as steady. As she tried to make it sound, I kept my calm. I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I know you've been using Dad's credit for years, and I know you've drained his savings, and I've got the proof to show it. I watched her waiting for her to fold, for her to try to talk her way out of it. But this time she didn't even try. Instead, she just sat there for a long time, her eyes darting around the room, her fingers twisting in her lap. The facade cracked. For the first time, I could see the vulnerability. You don't understand. She whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't give her the chance to finish. I understand that Dad's been too afraid to stand up to you, but I'm not. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Fear. I want him to get the money back, I said, keeping my tone even. And I want you to fix it. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence between us was heavy. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't waiting for her to make excuses. I just wanted her to face the truth. Even if she couldn't admit it to herself, I gave her one last chance. Make it right, or I'll make sure Dad gets what's owed to him. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and helplessness. Stood up abruptly, walking out of the room without saying another word, and that was it. I kept working with the lawyer, and before long we had a settlement offer. My mom had no choice but to pay back what she had taken from Dad. But it wasn't just the money, it was the fact that she couldn't cover up what she had done anymore. When it was all said and done, I made sure to sit down with Dad. You don't have to worry about it anymore, I said quietly. It's all taken care of. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. Thank you. And that was it. So here's where I'm at. Right now, I confronted my mom about everything I found, and she did pay back the money she took from my dad, but things have been really tense between us ever since. She hasn't apologized, and I don't think she ever will. She's barely speaking to me, and I can tell she's still angry about the whole situation. Dad is doing better now, but he's pretty quiet about it all. He's grateful, but he doesn't like talking about it, and I think part of him still feels bad for causing all this family drama. Max is still avoiding the topic entirely, and he's been really cold towards me lately. Like he's mad I dragged him into this. Even though I never asked him to be involved, I feel like I did the right thing, but at the same time, I'm wondering if I might have made things worse than they had to be. Was I too harsh in confronting my mom? Did I overstep? Should I have left things alone and just let them deal with it, even though my dad was suffering in silence? I'm really torn here. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for what I did, or was this justified? Would love to hear your thoughts.